the gender unicorn. Yeah, so just let's all go around, introduce yourself.
I'm Edelweiss. Edelweiss, they, them.
I am Tifa Robles. I work in Xbox marketing, pronouns she, her. Edelweiss, thank you so much. Ethan, how about you?
I'm Ethan. I am a TAM with public sector, pronouns he, him.
And I'm Petra Thomas, pronoun she, her. I am in WCB.
Great, and today we're talking about the gender unicorn, which if you have not heard of this, we actually have a diagram we're going to be showing you today, and then we're going to be walking through what all of these different things mean. Petra, I believe you know the background of this a little bit more than the rest of us, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, thanks, Tifa. It started off as a teaching aid for a university whose name escapes me at the moment, but it was around the idea of trying to educate folks that one's being from a point of view of sexual orientation and gender identity, presentation, physical attraction and emotional attraction were not fixed concepts. So first off, they were not fixed from the point of view of being polar binaries. So not everybody identifies as fit male or as female. They can be somewhere in between, as one example. And similarly with sexual orientation. And then the other part is that for some folks, like myself, I identify as a lesbian. I'm attracted to women, and that's where. And there's nothing at this point in time that is moving me from that point of view that makes a part of me. But for some folks, they're more fluid in either their sexual attraction or their gender presentation or their gender identity. And we're going to expand on that in here. And so reflecting that, the gender unicorn tries to explain that to folks that may not necessarily have come from that understanding, and therefore try and educate. And the goal is not necessarily for everybody to understand, but at least to accept that there's more than one way to navigate our life's journey.
Yeah. So I think let's start out by just going down the different parts of the unicorn and sort of talking about what these mean, and bringing in any of our personal experiences and how we, identify ourselves and can relate to these spectrums, because it really is about it being a spectrum from one end to the other. And I can go ahead and start out as far as my gender identity and expression. I'm very femme. My identity, I would say, on a scale of like feeling like a man and feeling like a woman. Expression wise, I am extreme femme. I love makeup. I love to wear dresses and appear girly. I get my nails done and my hair did and all that, things that are culturally associated with being a woman in our society. Identity wise, I actually relate a lot to things that are stereotypically for boys, video games, comic books, all those things. So while I identify as a woman, I think when it comes to what that means in our society, I actually relate a lot to men, and have always been able to have really strong friendships with men. So yeah, that's sort of been an interesting part of my identity. Knowing that I am a cisgendered woman, I still, growing up was always like, well, why do I like these things that are stereotypical things for boys? And it's really because that is just how our culture has told us and brought us up, that like these things are boys and girls, when really that's not reality. There is a spectrum, and people can enjoy all sorts of different things regardless of what their gender is. Someone wants to jump in next for that.
Sure. So, as somebody who's non-binary, I want to emphasize that it's the 3 lines on every one of them. It's not so much that it's a spectrum that has 2 poles, but every one is a vector. There's a male vector, there's a female vector, and there's a non-binary or other vector here. It's actually more complicated than that because there may be multiple other vectors for non-binary. There may be third gender, there may be exogender, there are so many that I definitely don't know all of them, but you can identify strongly on multiple. You can identify strongly on one and weakly on another, or several, or you can identify strongly on one and 0 on all the others, or weakly on all of them. So for me, my gender identity is pretty weak. The flag that's my background is actually the quagender flag, which isn't very commonly used or known, but it's kind of I don't really know, and it's not important enough to me to find a more specific term. So I use non-binary as a higher level umbrella, and quagender is eh. So I'm very low, not 0. I'm not agender, but very low on the vector for gender identity. Gender expression, I'm usually more femme, sometimes more non-binary, I guess, sometimes more masculine. Right. And for physically and emotionally attracted to, I'm pretty similar on both of them. I'm demi. So I'm demi and pan. So I'm attracted to any gender, just not until I have an emotional bond with them. And I've talked a lot, so I'll let somebody else take over after that.
I can go next. Happy Pride. Happy Pride.
Happy Friday.
So when looking down as to the gender unicorn when it comes to Ethan, my gender identity is very, very high on the male man spectrum. Same thing with my gender expression. And it's been like that forever, even, as a kid when my mom used to dress me up like a girl because I am a trans man. She was dressing me up like a girl. I would still be outside with the guys. That's just what it was for me. And with the physical and emotional attraction, it's both women as well. So I guess this conversation is very, very important, not only for us to have the amazing dialogue, but for us to be able to educate others on how the intersection of all of these things and the onion of them all as well. Because when I was reading up on the whole gender unicorn, because this is actually something new for me, I realized that, like others stated, you can actually it's a scale. It's a floating scale, and it's like a live document. So today, for someone, they may feel like they're just, their gender expression is more masculine, but tomorrow it may be more feminine. But for me, it's masculine.
I guess my turn. Thanks, Ethan. And I am in some ways the polar opposite of you. Like Tifa, I identify as female. I enjoy dressing up. We had a question this morning about favorite pairs of jeans, and I had to think, when was the last time I wore jeans and what jeans did I wear? Because I tend to like skirts and dresses. Like Tifa, I'm more femme. I got my nails done for today. I got my hair done. I enjoy makeup. Sometimes I struggle working from home. But like Ethan, I am attracted to women. So, and that is both from a physical and an emotional. So there can be, unlike how Edelweiss so well articulated, needing that emotional attachment before there could be any physical attachment. I'm maybe a little less discriminating that way. If I see somebody that's cute, I might go and try and find the courage to go and talk to her and see if there can be if we can click that way, as well as folks, of course, that like people are different. You can form an emotional attachment first, and then physical can come later. So there is that. I was assigned male at birth, and so in that regard. I was until I came out, until it all came together for me. It was a challenge because I go to social gatherings and I'd have a lot more fun hanging around with the women and chatting and having jokes than talking with the guys. And then when I was younger and hadn't yet figured myself out, there was always this kind of push pull of seeing somebody that was cute and thinking, "Ooh, I like you, but I also envy you. I want to be you. And how can I like you and be you and want to be you at the same time?" It was very, very difficult. And we didn't have the role models like we do today to be able to then say, this is okay, this is valid. And you don't have to figure it all out, because of course the first thing we think about is there's something wrong with me. Which is not a very good thing. And so, one hope is that by us having this kind of dialogue, and for other folks hearing this, then it gives them maybe some talking points to think about themselves, or maybe help somebody else along the way who may be struggling to understand how they're put together.
Yeah, I feel very strongly. You use the word role models, and I totally agree. Like, I didn't really have role models about what it meant to be someone who wasn't straight, much less somewhere in the middle of straight and gay, which is where I put myself. I consider myself bisexual, but I also relate strongly to pansexual, because to me, someone's gender doesn't matter when it comes to being attracted to them. Honestly, romantically or emotionally, gender just isn't what matters to me. I can acknowledge that what somebody's gender is when thinking about how I'm attracted to them, but at the same time, I have been attracted to trans women and trans men and women and folks who identify as non-binary. Like, it's not, that just isn't what's important to me. It really comes down to just, do they look appealing, and do I like them as a person? Personality is also very important when it comes to attraction for me. So yeah, when we get to the bottom of the gender unicorn chart, for me, it is a very kind of, not necessarily fluid, but it would be hard to put myself anywhere on the spectrum, without it being somewhere in the middle.
So what you can do, and what I do, is you don't have to pick one. You can be all of them.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on that, Eloise, and especially what you were talking about, Tifa, about the fact that, you're bisexual and you're pansexual. And that's a great point to talk about right now, because you had Petra, who stated that she's a lesbian. You saying that you're bisexual, pansexual, and although I transitioned, I'm heterosexual. So that kind of stuff can get you. Now you're getting in the weeds, right? And a person would say, well, how is it that you are transgender but you're heterosexual? Well, I'm attracted to women. I'm a man. I'm attracted to women. So that's what that part comes into play. And then you have Eloise that's just like, I like what I like, and it's okay with that. And I think that's what I want everyone to get out of this today, that it's okay to be whoever it is that you are. Like, there is no right or wrong answers to being human. There is no one size fit all for happiness, And I think this is awesome that we're having this dialogue and that everyone actually identifies as something totally different, because now we can really have a conversation about our differences and it still be under one umbrella,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think to your point, Ethan, the way that for me, I knew that I found my equilibrium is because everything seemed to fit, and it felt like I'd been carrying this load and I didn't realize I had it on my shoulders. And once I'd figured stuff out, all of a sudden I felt lighter and freer, like a weight had been taken off. And then things just flowed. You know, sometimes when you meet somebody and you just click and the friendship just goes like that. It was kind of like that with understanding my identity and presentation. That it felt like there was this weight. Does that reflect your experience and those of Tifa and Edelweiss?
It definitely reflected mine.
Yeah, I finding, hey, a friend of mine asked on Facebook, hey, cis friend, this was years ago, would you be offended if I called you, if somebody referred to you as they because they didn't know your pronouns? And at the time I didn't know I was non-binary yet. And I said, well, yeah, of course that would be fine. Like, why wouldn't it be fine? I'd rather you referred to me as they than assuming I was a man or a woman, right? And that just kind of like kicked off, like, discovering I don't have to struggle with not fitting into the woman box that has never fit for me was such a relief.
Yeah, absolutely.
It goes to show you about when you said the women box. I was speaking to a friend a few months ago, and she was telling me about something that's out that's like girl in a box or boy in a box, and you fit these things into a box. And like, especially, growing up, you hear boys don't cry. You hear all of these things, and it's like boy in a box. So when you just said girl in a box, it's just like, wow, yeah, that's exactly, it's so true. You shouldn't have to fit in a box. You should be able to step out of the box, and whatever it is that you want to be, you can be. And it does not matter. I had that conversation with my sister about, one of my nephews before, because his last name got changed, and we were going back and forth about the name. And I said, look, your name could be whatever you want it to be. And she's like, yeah, that's right. So it's so true on so many levels.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so powerful when you realize that for yourself, like when you can accept who you are, the difference that makes on your mental health and your comfort. For example, like I really struggled being friends with other women, or I guess girls when I was younger. Like I had a really hard time feeling comfortable in those friendships. And it wasn't until I realized that I was attracted to them that I started being able to actually have genuine friendships, because there was always this like strangeness that I couldn't place my finger on. And I thought it was just intimidation, right? I thought it was, oh, well, I'm intimidated because I'm supposed to compete, or, whatever messages I was getting from society as a young girl. But once I realized that, oh, I'm not just attracted to boys, I'm attracted to people, I started being more comfortable with my interpersonal relationships with people and understanding myself and my own feelings and thoughts. And now I have very good friends all over the gender spectrum, and it really helps me to be true to myself and feel comfortable being in situations that didn't used to feel safe.
That's awesome.
That is.
Yeah.
And now you have a safe place. Now this is a safe space.
Yes. Yes. And Ethan, if I can just say something a little bit about names. You were talking about was it your nephew that had a name change, last name change?
Yeah, his last name got changed to his dad's name instead of his mom's name, and my sister was going back and forth about that. And we was like, it's just a name. It's just a name.
Right. Well, here's the thing that's always struck me as being odd is, let's say we have a child that's assigned male at birth and is called James, or assigned female at birth is called Elizabeth. You know, James might be Jimmy when they're younger, and then they might become Jim, and then when they grow up, they become James, and Elizabeth might be Lizzie or Becky, and then become Beth, and then become Elizabeth. And we accept those stages as life journeys, and we say, okay, yeah, that's what's on their, that may be what was on their legal documents, but this is how they go by, and society accepts that. Yet, when it comes to somebody whose name, you know, desire to be referred to, who is not one of the poles, then says, hey, this is how I'm identifying, this is my name, and it becomes a big deal. And it's very much a double standard.
I agree with that.
Very much.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Because when I changed my name, it was crazy for people. It was like life changing for some people, especially my parents, because I changed my last name as well. Because I stated that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it how I wanted to do it, and I wanted to recreate myself with my name, and I was going to be the first of the generation. So I changed my name, my last name, to Alexander. So even years from now, when my kids go back and they're looking for the first Alexander, it's actually me. And a lot of people couldn't understand. You know, you wanted to change your first name. I get that. You want to change your middle name, but why? In all craziness, why would you change your last name? Like, why would you do that? You know? And I think it comes back to a part of our families at times feel entitled to tell us what to do with our lives. You know, how to dress, you know, what our name should be, you know, how we should feel. Like, you can't tell me how I feel. You know, I have to do what makes me feel alive, even if that is me changing my last name, you know?
Yep, absolutely right. No, it's true. And I'm in the same boat. I did the same, change first and last name. But then I had people saying to me,
better that way, right?
well, yeah, you mean you should be the star of your own story, right? You need to own that. But I had people say to me, "Oh, you've changed it legally now. Okay, then it's all right." No, it's no more or less valid if you've done it legally or if you haven't done it legally. It's just who you are. So
I am not trans, but I started going by a different first name when I was 19. And a large part of that was I wanted my own identity as an adult, separate from what I grew up with. And like, not at all because of my parents. I love my parents. I've always had support from them. But I grew up in a town that I didn't fit in, that I never was able to be my full self. And when I moved over to Seattle and started going to college, some people were calling me the nickname Tifa, and I felt so strongly being called that I started going by that in my entire life. And it's really interesting how people react to that, and that's not even with like a switch in how I'm presenting myself to the world. So I can't imagine how hard that must be, because I still get people give me weird looks that I go by a different name than what's on my birth certificate.
Well, I know with me, and, you know, Petra, you can tell me if you had the same experience. Even after I changed my name, people still thought that they could still call me my dead name. And
yeah,
I cut so many people off. I literally had so many conversations cutting people off, or people would call my phone, and if they did not say Ethan, you know, anything, if they said anything pertaining to my dead name, I would hang up, and then they would say, "Why'd you hang up?" And I said, "I thought you had the wrong number." So did you ever experience that, Petra?
yes, but I wasn't as brave as you to hang up on them. Sometimes it was usually things like, you know, marketing firms and so forth, and they'd say, "We'd like to speak to dead name," and I'd say, "Can I ask who's calling?" And then, you know, they'd ask them to explain who it was. So, you know, you kind of rehearse a drill and you go through it. But yeah, generally my friends and family, they adjusted quickly. They slipped up from time to time. Misgendering was more of an issue really than using dead name. But here's something that, and this is, and Tifa and Edelweiss, I don't know if this, because Edelweiss, I don't know if Edelweiss is your birth name, and you don't need to share that or not. But when you're in a room or you're on a project or a meeting or something, and you hear your dead name being used, but it's somebody else, and especially right afterwards, there was this little chill that went up my back. It's like, oh, am I being dead named? Oh no, it's not me. Okay, act natural. Don't don't react. Don't react.
My birth name is something else, but I was nicknamed Edelweiss at birth by my father because my parents were always at odds, and my birth name didn't ever stick. I've gone by primarily Edelweiss since I was 5. I'm kind of lucky, and I changed it legally at 19. I still look up when people call my birth name. And get very confused when it's not somebody from my past looking for me. But it doesn't cause many problems for me, thankfully, except for sometimes when I need to prove my citizenship or something, which is really annoying because getting documents from the state of California is a pain.
I'm sure.
So I've been very lucky with it, thankfully.
Well, I'm happy for you that you had that kind of luck.
Thank you.
I mean, literally, it wouldn't be like it would be like people who literally would try to convince me that they have to get used to my new name. So I would give them, it wasn't that I was just rude and I would just hang up on them. I would give them so many chances. But if my mom can get it right and my granny who's 80 years old can get it right, then there's no excuse for anyone. So
yeah, that's not okay how they treat you, and I'm so sorry that you have been through that. That's not acceptable.
I appreciate that, but it made me stronger, and I'm Ethan Alexander now, so it's cool. But that's why I enjoy doing things like this, so that we can educate others about how you have to be mindful about how you talk to people, how you treat people, and the things that you think is a joke. It's not a joke to us, because all of us in this meeting right now, we can all say that we've experienced some form of way of someone just wanting to be funny, right? So
Yep.
it's fine.
Well, and Ethan Alexander is such a great name.
It is.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
It conveys such strength. It's really, it's really good.
Thanks. I appreciate that. You wouldn't think it was a guy with a bunch of tattoos. That's why I really like it. You would never think, oh, that guy has a tattoo in his head. You would never think that. So it worked. It works for me.
All right.
Well, I think we've got about 15 minutes left. I know I kind of dragged this off a little sideways with the naming, but one aspect of the unicorn, which maybe the audience would be interested in knowing, is maybe digging in a bit more the difference between physical attraction and emotional attraction, and how that manifests itself. From as I said, for me, I'm very, I guess, in the majority that way, in that I tend to see a physical attraction as a first, although it's not necessarily the case, but it often works. But both Edelweiss and Tifa, you mentioned how important emotional attachment is. Maybe one of you want to expand a little bit on that for the benefit of the audience. How do you know?
You said you were demisexual, so I think that would be a great question for you to start with. That's okay.
Yeah, sure. So demisexual is not having not having sexual attraction until you have an emotional bond with somebody. So like exactly what the form that takes varies from person to person, but generally, like for me, it's not being sexually interested in somebody until I've known them for a very long time, like even just as close friends, but more often like dating. Um, or And there's also demi-romantic, which is similar. Probably you're not going to be romantically interested in somebody until you've had that emotional bond as friends, generally, for a long time. But the primary difference between them is just the different forms of attraction. And there are lots of different avenues of attraction, right? There's aesthetic attraction, like, damn, she's really pretty, versus sexual attraction, wanting to go have sex with somebody, right? Emotional attraction, or romantic attraction, is wanting to be in a romantic relationship with somebody, which might not involve sex. A lot of people do have the same romantic and sexual attraction. So often when somebody says, I'm a lesbian or I'm pansexual, they might mean I am homoromantic and homosexual, or I am panromantic and pansexual. And so they are romantically and sexually attracted to the same spectrum of genders, right? But some people differ. So they might be homoromantic and asexual, for instance. So they are interested in romantic relationships with people of the same gender, but not interested in, they don't experience sexual attraction at all. And just huge variety, right? So for me, they tend to overlap pretty well. So I tend to be romantically and sexually attracted to the same like spectrum of people. Usually the same person is if I'm romantically attracted to somebody, I'm probably going to be sexually attracted to them as well. And that's how attraction works for me, although the sexual attraction usually comes later. But that's kind of beyond the scope of the gender unicorn. It might be different for somebody else, right? Petra said you're more physically oriented, so you might hit the physical attraction first and romantic later, or only on different people. And I have gone a little bit beyond the gender unicorn, I think. And Tifa, maybe you have different aspects to talk about there.
The two feel really connected in my mind. Like I do feel like there's a difference between like I can look at someone and be like, they look good, versus like when I have like a huge crush on somebody where I like want to know them more and I think they're really pretty. Like it just feels deeper. Like everything about attraction feels deeper when there is emotion attached to it. And I mean, I can even go back thinking about past relationships where I maybe didn't find somebody physically attractive until I got to know them, and then they were physically attractive to me after that. And I think a little bit of a tangent, but I think something really important about all of these conversations is that things change like over time. So if you consider yourself, for example, bisexual now, 10 years from now, I might consider myself pansexual instead. These things change. So looking back at who I was 10 years ago, I don't think I'd realized how much emotional attraction was important to me. Like I thought that physical attraction was like the number one thing when it came to who I wanted to kiss, right? But yeah, definitely the two are very related, and I think everyone feels differently on how important physical versus emotional are. And that's okay. We can all feel different.
we're all human, right? So you're right.
Exactly.
We can all feel.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it goes hand in hand with me. So for me, I would have to agree it's hand in hand because the physical attraction and the romantic and emotional attraction, it goes hand in hand with me. So that's something that I've never really thought about until, we started talking about the gender unicorn, because it's like you really have to think about it. Like, wow, okay, emotionally attractive, physically attractive, romantically attractive. So often we just focus on one thing, and that's just who I'm attracted to, right? And we really don't think about all the dynamics of that attraction. Well, I know I don't. I can only speak on my own behalf.
There is one part of the gender unicorn we haven't talked a lot about, and it's because it seems very straightforward, which is sex assigned at birth, male, female. However, intersex, I think, is like 1 in every 1,000 people, and it blows my mind how little that's talked about in our educational system, for example. How much of our society just doesn't even know that this is a very real thing, that people are born, like lots of people are born not directly being female or male. And yeah, I know everyone in this call probably has very strong feelings on that lack of education, but I don't know if you're comfortable speaking to that a little bit more.
I would. Because you're right, there isn't enough representation. There isn't enough that we learn about. It used to be that doctors would make a decision if there was somebody who was intersex and say, well, what do we need to do? What intervention do we need to take before even speaking, getting the input from the child? And I've read several stories where it caused them tremendous anguish later on because it didn't align to their sense of gender identity. And even when it did, they felt like they were kind of robbed in so far as, well, this was my body, and why did you push me one way or another? And now that we understand more that gender identity is a spectrum, it makes even less sense to do that folks can make their own choices, educated choices as they get older, or decide to stay, with where they are, because in the same way that our identity is a spectrum and our gender presentation can be a spectrum and our physical attraction can be a spectrum, emotional attachment, there's no reason why, if one is intersex, that in itself represents an end state and is perfectly valid.
Well said.
Yes. I think that the numbers might actually be a lot higher than that, and we just aren't made aware of it because of all those non-consensual surgeries, pretty much. Also, sex isn't quite as binary or even ternary as that. Although we bucketize it a lot. Even like chromosomes are more than that, more so, but physical sex is much more complex than just male, female, and intersex. So I'm not sure quite where I was going with this, but it's definitely something that needs more acknowledgement and representation and discussion and protection. And we need to hear from intersex people for themselves, and we need the medical field to start treating them as human beings who have rights, in particular.
Yeah, you're right. It's very complex.
Yeah.
When you get down to chromosomes, I mean, the amount of like options of what your chromosomes are is so complex when you get down into the scientific part of it, that it's really sad that our society just is like, well, let's just throw it into a binary, 2 buckets, when it is so much more than that.
Yeah.
It would be awesome if we had someone that was intersex that can educate all of us more about that, because that's something that we all have to do a better job being able to speak to. No.
It's true. We
But
all
I
need
think
allies.
the biggest
sorry,
thing
Tifa.
out of all the it's okay. The biggest thing out of all these conversations today really is start listening to other perspectives, start checking your own assumptions. Yeah. We're
Brave
about to wrap
dialogue.
up.
I said brave dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So we're about to wrap up. Is there any final closing thoughts that you'd like to share before we move on to the next segment?
The only thing I would like to share, and the only thing I want to say, is have a great Pride on Purpose.
You've been waiting for an opportunity to say that, haven't you?
I haven't said it all day.
No, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak, and being able to hang out with all of you. And Ethan is always a ray of sunshine. So,
Oh, thanks, Petra. You're amazing. You look amazing today, Petra. Not like you don't any day, but you look amazing today. You're stunning.
thank you.
I
Edelweiss,
don't think
thank
I
you so
have.
much for joining us. Oh,
Thank you. I was just going to say I don't think I have anything new to add. This has been my first panel ever, and I appreciate it being such a wonderful panel. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Petra, for inviting me.